Hello, I'm Geoffrey Lessel. You can call me Geo. I am the author of Phoenix in Action. We're going to be going over some things today with the Elixir programming language and Phoenix, the Phoenix web framework. This is who I am. I'm Geo. I'm Geoffrey Lessel. You can find me at these different locations online. What are we going to do today? We are going to be building a real-time chat application with Elixir and Phoenix, particularly with a module in Phoenix called LiveView, which is really cool. It allows, like, Phoenix on its own was really good for real-time communication between the client and the server. Well, and Elixir itself was built for that on top of Erlang. So it's on its own really good for that. But then Phoenix LiveView takes it to the next level, which is really cool. So we're going to be utilizing that to create some really cool stuff. Here's our editor. So we're going to be going from, I've got nothing in terms of code installed yet. I have kind of gone through this a little bit on my own just to see what it would take, see if we could do it within an hour. It'll probably take a little more than an hour. The first thing we need to do is we need to start a new Elixir application. So if you guys have not done this before, it's super easy. And the cool thing about Elixir is it provides some really good help, even in the command line. So if I just do like mix Phoenix new, it'll print out a whole bunch of information about the options that we have, how to configure the application in terms of the generator. So in this case, you know, this command creates a new Phoenix project and expects the path of the project as an argument. A project with a given path will be created, and the application name and module name will be retrieved from the path unless module or app is given. And that way we can kind of specify exactly what we want things to be named. It also has some options. So --live, which includes the Phoenix LiveView module to make it easier than ever to build interactive real-time applications. A little plug in there for Phoenix LiveView in the help, which is pretty fun. Umbrella, which creates an umbrella application so you can kind of keep your business logic and your web interface for that separate, and maybe even include other interfaces in there as well. And then the name of the OTP application and the module, the base module, and then what kind of database you're going to use. I'm going to go ahead and go through a couple of these. First of all, this --live. We are going to be creating a Phoenix LiveView application. So we'll go ahead and pass this --live. It does a few things for us that makes things quite a bit easier when we're creating the application. So that's nice. The other thing we're going to be doing is we are going to be doing no database. So the idea behind the chat application, it's going to be basically zero configuration chat for the end user. So you don't log in, you don't even have to like manually create a room to chat in. You basically just go to a URL and start chatting. Now there's some downsides to that. One is your username will be generated automatically and randomly. So you won't be able to choose that. But you know, if you wanted to take this idea and run with it in a different direction, you could of course allow account creations, reserve usernames for certain individuals, that kind of thing, certain accounts. But today we're just going to do random usernames and go from there. So no database though, no Webpack. So that basically just says, you know, I'm not going to be doing this with some JavaScript, or if I am, I need to manually handle it myself, like maybe with Brunch or some other packaging asset building management system, whatever. No Ecto. So that's what we're going to be doing. We don't want to generate Ecto files. And Ecto is a really good package to help you manage your database connections. And since we're going to have no database, we're going to just say no Ecto. And that's going to take care of the no database stuff that we were talking about. No HTML. Do not generate HTML views. We do want HTML stuff. Get text, dashboard. I'll show you a little bit about Phoenix Live Dashboard, possibly once we get into it. It's pretty cool, but we do want dashboard. That's kind of fun. And it doesn't really, there's no benefit to not including it for us. Binary ID, that's primary key for Ecto types. We're not going to be using Ecto, so not a big deal. And then verbose. And then some examples down here, just a little more text, but let's get into it. So we want to do mix Phoenix new. We're going to do live, and we're going to do no Ecto. And let's call our application chat. Super creative. I know, I came up with that on my own. I put a poll out. I'm just kidding. Let's just name it chat. No echo. So it's not echo friendly, but we do want no Ecto. So it created all that from our generator, and we told it to go ahead and install and fetch the dependencies. So it's going to do that. Well, let's just let that finish because it's not going to take long. And the next thing you're going to do is on the command line as well. Let's talk about how we're going to generate. I mentioned that we're going to be generating the chat rooms names dynamically, or the usernames dynamically. And you can essentially create a chat room on the fly. And one of the things we're going to be able, or one of the ways we're going to be able to do that is by using a package called mnemonic slugs. Man, that word is so hard to say for me. But we're going to be using that to generate some random slug information, some random URLs. So that'll be nice to have. From there, man, this is taking a little longer than I was expecting, which is unfortunate. But I'll tell you what, let's go ahead and look at mnemonic slugs. So let's go to GitHub over here, GitHub. And there's a cool website called Awesome Elixir that I go to a lot to check out new packages, or if I'm looking for something that that does a specific thing, I can go here and find that. So this is mnemonic slugs. Well, let's search for that. Mnemonic slugs, a memorable mnemonic slug generator in Elixir. So if we look in there, it'll give us a little bit of information about how to use it and what it is. So essentially, you can tell it how many slugs you want, and it'll generate a string with that many of those slugs in there, which is pretty cool. And that's how we're going to be generating our random usernames. We're also going to be allow the user to, if they can't think of their own chat room name, we'll allow them just to create a random room, and that will be handled. The random room name will be handled by this package as well. Let's check our status of our install, and it's still going. That is unfortunate. Let's go ahead and cancel that for now. And let's go into our chat directory, and let's go and start up a server and see what that looks like. So we have done nothing in terms of configuration of the server. Let's see if it actually has installed the assets, and for some reason it was just hanging. Okay, so now it's going to compile the Elixir. And if you didn't know, Elixir is a compiled language, which makes it fast. It compiles down to the Beam VM bytecode, and essentially it goes through Erlang as well, and Erlang is a really cool language. And this is taking a long time. Let me check to see what is eating up all my processing power, and I'll be right back. I have checked, and it looks like it was potentially my backup software. All right, so let's go to our localhost and see what we have here. So localhost 4000, and we have Phoenix. It is live. It is usable. We can do things in it, which is cool. So it's got this live dashboard thing in there. It shows you some stats about your running application, including like uptime and your output, your input, ports, processes, all this real-time information that you can get about your application, which is pretty neat. But we're not going to spend a whole lot of time in there. We're going to spend most of our time out here. All right. So within here, this is essentially what the generator produces for us in terms of HTML. We don't want most of this. We want to really get rid of it. So let's just strip all that out and go from there. So let me open up the application here. So it's going to be in lib, chat web. And from in there, it's going to be under templates, and then layout, and then root is going to be one of them. This is where the navigation, like the header stuff is. And let me turn off fly check mode and format all buffer mode. So within here, we can remove this header, and we can just say, I don't know, h1 Phoenix in action chat. How about that? And then the inner content renders what the specific view or the specific route renders, which is nice. So you can see that now we have Phoenix in action chat. Let me back that out just a little bit, because I think this section container has information that we're going to want. So let's do it in here. Phoenix in action chat. Let's see if that works better, because I kind of want that centered. There we go. Perfect. Also, Phoenix has an auto reload mechanism. So once it recognizes that there's been some code changes, it'll automatically reload the application without you having to do anything. And it is not that uncommon for the web page to have been reloaded before I'm even able to come to the app back to the web page, which is pretty crazy. All right, so let's check this. We'll go ahead and quit that, because what we're going to do next is include that mnemonic slugs package now that we have things compiled. So that we do things in terms of packages in the mix.exs file, and everything's configured here in this project function. And you can see the deps, that's our dependencies. If we go down, and then it runs the deps function. So if we go down here to the deps function, We can see these are all the dependencies that our application depends on at the moment. We want to add another one here of mnemonic slugs. Mnemonic slugs. Man, that is so hard for me to say and spell. So we're at 0.0.3 on this package. So we want to make sure to get that one or anything above that within the point release. So we can say mix deps.get, and that'll fetch that package for us. And then we'll restart the server again. And the next time we've restarted it, we'll have that package started with us. So let's do mix phoenix.server, and it'll recompile a little bit because it's got to recompile that mnemonic slugs in for us. So there it is, compiling mnemonic slugs. And while it's recompiling, let's also clear out on our web page here, this little area right here, this welcome to Phoenix, all that. We don't need that. That's not something that we need. So let's clear that out. And that is in a template directory, template. And since we don't know this yet, but Phoenix, when it generates the code, it creates a page controller and it routes the root route goes to this page controller. So our template is going to be templates.page.index or page index. And it's trying to look at every single, I'm going to create a Git repository here, because whenever I try to find a file, it tries to find every file in there, including things like node modules and things like that. So as long as I create a repository, it should ignore those things for me. Yeah, that's gonna be a lot faster. So if we go to pagelive.html.leex and look in there, this is all that that HTML that's generating that box and that search thing and all that. So let's get rid of this and also disable format all mode. All right, so we're just gonna say goodbye to this, save it, and hopefully we've got recompiled. Yes. So as you can see, again, it beat me to get back to the reload. So we have nothing again, which is perfect. That's what we wanted. We wanted nothing. So now we have nothing. Let's add something. Now the first thing we're going to add is just a little button to allow a user to go to a random URL. So let's try that. If we go back to our session here, you'll notice I started the server with that IEX-S mix Phoenix server, and that allows us to go into an IEX REPL. And if you're familiar with Elixir, or if you're not familiar with Elixir, IEX is essentially the REPL for Elixir. And even though it's a compiled language, it does some on the fly compiling to and then run the code, which is nice. But we can use the things that we've compiled in here. So if we go to mnemonic and then slugs, and then you can even press tab and it has auto completion. So we can say generate slug and maybe like 3 of them. And so now we have Rose, Sahara, Citizen. Cool, so that's pretty neat. But we want to use this on maybe like a button that would take the user to that random URL. So let's create a button. A button. Who's got the button? So I'm just back in this blank pagelive.html.leex file. And first thing we want to do is I'm just going to say a title is create a random room. And create a random room. And we'll see what that looks like. Save it. There's our button. Right now, if we click on it, nothing happens because we haven't added any action to it or anything like that. Now, Phoenix provides, or Phoenix LiveView specifically, provides some listeners and some form handlers, things like that. So we can go in and attach Phoenix LiveView listeners to specific events in the browser. In this case, we want to listen for a click on this button. So we say Phoenix click, and when we hear that click, we're going to go to the random room, or we're going to send the random room event to our server. So now if I click it, you're going to notice that did you see my cursor spin just a little bit there? That's because if we look in the logs, the server actually crashed. The process that's running this Phoenix LiveView that contains this Phoenix LiveView process crashed because we haven't defined a function matching in page live in chatweb.pagelive. Now you may be wondering, what is page live? Let me go to the routes or the router file, and in here you can see how Phoenix will handle a request to our server. In this case, it pipes it through this browser, which handles a bunch of things in terms of plugs, like fetching the session, fetching Flash, protecting from forgery, that type of stuff. But the thing we're interested in here is this scope here. So scope / means at the root level, we're going to be in the chat web kind of namespace. And we're going to pipe all these requests through this browser pipeline that we see above. And finally, within the slash, anything that goes to slash, from there, we want to send to page live and then the index action. So let's look in page live. In here, you can see we have a few different functions defined for us. And again, this was just made by the generator. And a lot of this we're going to delete here in a second. But one thing we want to keep is this mount function. Every time someone requests a new web page from us, Phoenix LiveView will run this mount action to mount the page in terms of the socket, the live connection for the user. So we're going to keep that. But this suggest, search, all that kind of stuff we don't want. So let's just go and delete that. But what we do want is to handle that click. So we can just say this impl true is basically saying, yes, this is an implementation. We're implementing a function in this case. So make sure that it kind of basically gives you some extra error handling and messaging for that, which is nice. So we can say def and go back to the error here. We can kind of see how we need to define this. So it says the function that was called was this page live handle event with this random room as the first argument. If you remember, what we told Phoenix to do when we pressed that click was to send an event named random room to our server. And so we need to handle that event now. The second option, or the second parameter, is a list of params. And in this case, there are none, so we can ignore them. And then finally, all the events sent to Phoenix are going to be through socket connections or, the socket information. And that's something we need to carry on throughout the process of the connection. So we're going to need to handle the socket as well. And we'll show you how to do that here in a second. All right, so let's define that handle event random room. And the first thing is we need to define the function name. And then another cool thing about Elixir, if you're not familiar with it, is it provides pattern matching on your function definitions. So you can have multiple handle events, and each one can handle a different event. In this case, we need to handle the random room event. So whenever handle event is called, where the message is sent to this process, it's going to look through all the handle events and find one that says, okay, this is the first one of the ones that are defined that matches. So we're going to match on random room. We don't care about the parameters, but we do care about the socket. So like in many programming languages, if you precede a variable with an underscore, that basically tells Elixir that you don't really care about what it is. Now, if I had done this and just not used it, then Elixir's compiler would warn us about that. Said, hey, you've got this variable that you're not using that you haven't preceded with an underscore. Do you really want to use it? And if not, maybe just go ahead and precede that with an underscore. So let's do that. Now, handle event expects a certain type of return value. In this case, we're just going to say no reply and socket. Now, the no reply basically means don't reply to the sender of the message. And in this case, we don't want to reply to the sender of the message because that's another process. We're just going to pass that straight on through. And the socket is what tells Phoenix what to do now with that socket. So since Phoenix basically kind of reloops on itself and handles that process and goes over and over and over and say, what's the new state of the socket? What's the new state of the socket? What's the new state of the socket? And in this case, we're just saying the state of the socket was the exact same as the state of the socket you gave us a minute ago. And we're going to change that in a minute, but I'll show you what happens if we just define it like this. So I'm going to save that. Now, when I go and click this, we don't have that spinning cursor anymore, and the server doesn't crash. In fact, we look in here, there's no crashing on the server. If we wanted to, we could log that out. In fact, let's just go ahead and do that. I'm a kind of a logger guy. I like to just see things in my logs as I'm debugging. So it's likely we're going to need a logger in there. Anyway, so in this case, let's just say logger info, click, and save that. And we can show you that indeed we are handling that click event. So I'll click that, go back to our terminal, and yes, you can see in our logs now we have info click. Perfect. Now, what do we need to do to send the user on their way to a random page, random chat room? Well, this is where that mnemonic slugs comes in, excuse me. We can say that like a random slug equals mnemonic slugs, mnemonic slug, generate slugs. And in this case, let's do maybe a 4-string or 4-word slug. Sure, why not? And then let's, we can just log out the slug here. I'll show you that. Make sure that works. Click that. We did get a crash there. Let's see what that is. Oh, no, that's still reloading. My bad. So let's try it now. Click it. And here is our random slug. We've got Cactus, Gloria, Martin, Family. That's a beautiful chat room name. Now we want to redirect the user to a path that has this in it. That would be their chat room path. So our random slug is going to be that plus the initial slash, because that would be the path. So we're going to, this little less than or greater than symbol basically means concatenate. So we're concatenating the string of of the slash with the generated slug. So now if I save this, well, you can imagine if I click on the button now, after it reloads, click on the button, you can see that we do indeed have the slash now in front of our generated slug. So let us now redirect the user there. Now, I mentioned earlier that when we return the socket, it basically tells Phoenix LiveView what to do with the connection. And Phoenix LiveView provides something called a function called push redirect. And it takes the socket as its first argument. So we're going to say, for this socket, push a redirect to the slug. So we're going to basically say, go to this path now. And I bet you can guess what's going to happen when we save this, we press the button, and we'll see we have an error, undefined function slug. Now that may be because, that's because I didn't say random slug. That's not the error that I was expecting. So let's do that, random slug, save that and reload here. Oh, actually I didn't even press reload. Again, Phoenix knows that I saved it, so it reloaded for me. I go to random slug. We can see that we were redirected to this Panther Silk Empire Special URL, but we don't have anything that's handling that request. There's no router that handles that, which is something we need to define. We need to handle this request now. We need to say, now that the request has been made, we need to go to the new URL. In this case, we need to go to our router file. And right now we're matching on this live slash. Basically says anytime there's any request for this slash page, we're going to be handled by page live. But instead, we want to go and handle anything else. So it's basically going to be like a wild card. It's going to catch everything else. And so we can say within here, we're going to also be a live path, and we're going to use this slash and then a colon, and then we're going to, this is up to us, we're just going to name it ID. And let's just call this room live. We're going to create a module called room live to handle all this. And again, we'll have the index action. Now, ID, what that will do is anytime we request something with a slash in front of it and anything after that, it'll be put into a parameter called ID for us, so that we can then use that to do something we need to do later, which is to subscribe to the channel's notifications, which we'll get into in a little bit. But for now, let's just do this live ID, room live index. And again, if I reload here at this page, we'll notice that we get a different error now, that room live is undefined. So we need to create this room live handler. I'm going to split the page here and go back to our page live, because we can actually copy and paste some of this into our new module. So I'm going to close that and open up a new one. And chat web, and then live, and then room live.ex. Paste that. Instead of page live, I'm going to change this to room live. It's going to use LiveView. We're going to go ahead and put a logger in there. And for the mounts, for now, we're just going to pass the socket right on with none of these parameters, none of these assigns, rather. And I'll talk about those a bit more later. We're not going to handle any events on this page yet, because there are going to be no events yet. And in params, as I mentioned, now we'll have the param of ID passed along. And again, this is where some of the pattern matching functionality in Elixir comes through, because we can pattern match on the parameters that come through. So we know the ID is going to be our room ID. So we'll just say the only thing we care about in the session at this point, or sorry, in the params at this point, is the room ID. Now the session we don't care about either at the moment, and we're just going to pass the socket right on through and return OK. So when mount actually expects an OK if things have gone as expected when it mounts. So I'm going to save that, and again we'll get probably a different error as it reloads here. Indeed, it says render 1 was not implemented for chat web room live. So we need to say what we want the server to render when someone comes to this URL. So we need to define the room live .html.leex. Now, leex basically means it's a live Elixir template, which kind of mixes up the HTML and the templating stuff, which is pretty cool. So what are we going to say in our, for now, let's just say, hi, mom, and see what we get. Make sure, oh man, this is what I get for the format all thing. Format all mode off, fly check off. Okay, now let's say hi, mom, bring back up our browser. And so now we have hi, mom, which is neat. Now, what if we wanted to let the user know, because we're cool like that, we want to let them know what room they're chatting in and their username. For now, we don't know usernames. We're not going to worry about that. But we do know already that they're at this Panther Silk Empire Special chat room. So let's let them know that that's where they are. So we can say, I don't know, maybe currently chatting in, and we have this assigned. We will have this assigned. We don't have it yet, but we'll call it room ID. And let's do it like that. Let's make this strong as well. Strong. All right. Let's see what that looks like. It's going to crash because we haven't defined the room ID assign. Let's see, did that save? Yeah. All right, room ID not available in the EEX template. So why is that? What is room ID? So room ID is an assign. And if you're familiar with other web frameworks and templating things, it's actually the variable that the controller sends on to the view. In this case, we don't have a controller as such, but we have this LiveView, which acts kind of like a controller as the process. So let's define that room ID. Let's go back to our page live.eex. Let me split the page here again so we can kind of see both at the same time. So over on the right, you can see our HTML, and then on the left is our LiveView function, or our LiveView module. So when we mount, we have the room ID. We're not doing anything with the room ID at the moment. But what we can do is we can assign to the socket an assign variable called room ID, and its value is going to be what we pulled out from the function definition, which is room ID. So now if I save this, LiveView will assign to the socket the variable room ID, and we're going to use that now in the rendering on the web page. So now we can say currently chatting in Panther Silk Empire Special. Yay! So let's start styling this up a little bit. I am not a CSS person, so my styles are going to be lacking. You're gonna be able to do things much better than I would, but that is okay. Turn off that check here. Okay, so let's make it like a chat container, because we're going to. Before we do it, let's make the chat container. Let's make it first on the page. Let's put it on the page. So we have the currently chatting. Let's go ahead and add a div and name it chat container. Container, and in there we're going to have like a messages div, and there we'll say chat goes here for now because we have no chat yet. We're just making it look the way it should look. And close those divs, save that, and let's see what it looks like now. So chat goes here, yay. So now let's make that just a little bit more visible. So we're gonna make this display flex, put a border on there. I'll pick solid and maybe something gray-ish. How many C's is that? One more C? Sure. Yeah, there we go. And then padding, let's add a padding in there, and then margin. We're going to do -1 at the top, 1 at the right, and then 1 at the bottom, and then -1 at the right. Let me put an M in here. And then like a flex direction. This will be, we're going to have the chat input at the bottom. So let's just say where the chat direction is going to be column on here, so it'll line it up one on top of the other, and I'll justify the content as space between. That'll put the space in between the things, and then let's just set the height a solid value, or a static value for now. And then for chat messages, which is inside, we want to grow that as big as it can get, and right now it'll be plenty big because we don't have anything other than chat messages. So that's going to be what it looks like. So we'll just put our chat in there. At the bottom down here, probably we'll put the input field. And then on the right, we'll eventually put, we'll use presence, Phoenix presence, which is really fun. And it tracks user activity across your distributed application, which is really nice. But we'll put like who's online, who's in the channel at the moment. And that'll be on the right over here somewhere. Again, that'll probably look ugly, but that's what we got. All right, so let's create a form for inputting chat. All right, so we're going to do it inside this chat container for now. Are we? Yeah, why not? So we're going to say f equals form4. And like most web frameworks, Phoenix has some form builder helpers and other functions you can use to build forms. So form4 is one of those, and we're going to call the form chat. And for the action, we're going to have it be no action at this moment because we're going to do it all through Phoenix LiveView. Now, Phoenix LiveView, like you may ask, like what if the user has JavaScript disabled? And in the promo videos, I mentioned that we are actually not going to be writing any JavaScript today, which is insane if you think about it. It's wild that we've got this crazy real-time interactive website, this chat, but we're not going to write any of the JavaScript. It's all going to be server rendered, and LiveView already has the tools in place to communicate to the server and the client as needed, which is pretty fun. The reason I mention that is because you can fall back to an HTML route if you need to. In this case, we're not going to. Then we're going to say this, we're going to put an ID of chat form on here just so we can track it with our CSS. And then Phoenix, I mentioned earlier that Phoenix has those hooks that you can hook onto to do callbacks or handle messages, send messages. One of those for forms is Phoenix submit. And we can just say, we can call this one submit message. Submit chat, submit message. How about submit message? Let's see, do anything else in there? I don't think so. Let's go with that. Then we need a text input. We'll call this it's going to be for the F variable because we're saying F is the form for chat. So F, and then in there is going to be the message. And then we'll have a placeholder of enter your message. Sure. And then we need to close out the form. Now, Phoenix does have the ability to do all this within like a do block. Where you don't have to manually close out the form, but Phoenix LiveView, the way it tracks things is it essentially needs this F variable to be able to know when things have changed within the web page and re-render them correctly, helpfully. Not sure what the right word for that would be, but to do it very efficiently. So we need to do it that way. So now we have our chat text box here, which is lovely. So I want to chat. So what happens if we like hit enter here and so we see, again, you saw that spinning wheel and it crashed. If we go back to our logs here, our server logs, you can see that it crashed. And the reason was because we don't have a handle event submit message. Just like when we had that, the click for the button to start up the, or to go to the random web page, random chat room, we don't have the ability to submit the message quite yet. All right, we need to define the handle event submit message. So let's do that. And that's going to be inside our page live, or sorry, our room live. This is an implementation. So we're going to say def handle event, and our event is submit message. And then it's going to have params. In this case, we do care about the params because that's going to be the form. When this submit message is called or sent, it's going to grab all the information from the form and send that on with the message. So we do have a chat. We named the form itself chat. And then within that chat form, we have a field called message. So we can say message is, we can basically pattern match that message to grab it as we define the function itself. And then of course we always have the socket come along as well. For now, let's just log out the message. So log info message was message. And again, we're going to say no reply and send the socket straight on through. Now I think I probably have one too few closing parentheses. No. All right, let's submit a message now and see what happens. A message. Hit enter. So we see it didn't crash. We still have our message in the box here. If we go to our terminal, we can see that we do have message, a message. So we are receiving that message fine. Now, what do we need to do with that message, right? We need to broadcast that message out to all the people who are currently subscribed to the webpage.